our party has made it to Ank'Harel, and we're going to talk about what happened. So let's dig in. Before we dive into what actually happened during our session, I feel like it's important we talk about what went well in our session. So the one thing that I think went really well is we had a check-in with each of the characters specifically to see how they were feeling about things, and also with the players. So we did that during a long rest. I feel like this check-in gives the players an opportunity to actually sit and stop and think about what their characters are doing, what they're going through, and gives them just an opportunity to kind of introspectively, as their characters, roleplay a little bit and think about how things are affecting them so that they can get into character a little bit. And we did this pretty early on in the session. I feel like it was helpful. What could be better? I feel like my party had a real hard time with the open city concept of Ank'Harel. So far, it's been kind of railroady, not super. I mean, they have their choices, but we're on a specific path. And here in Ank'Harel, the sky's the limit, whatever you want to do. And I feel like it took them a while to get their feet under him. I do feel like the pamphlet we handed out helped a little, but overall, I feel like it could have gone a little bit better. So let's talk about what happened with our session. We picked up right where we left off, where the rival party had showed up with Aloysia in the prayer site of Avandra. My party talked the rival party out of stealing the jewel from them, and Aloysia got upset and left, collapsed the tunnel, and left the teleportation tablets. So we pick up from there. My party goes up and talks to the rivals and say, hey, how's it going? It's been a long time. Here's what we've been up to. The rival party filled them in, and if you're interested in that, basically they've just been asked by Elder Kolbukaz to go and figure out what this red substance is. It's basically they're on missions to go and figure out what ruidium is. Once the conversation is done, Io goes and checks out the tunnel, comes back with the teleportation tablets. Galsariad identifies them as teleportation tablets, and Trixie uses an Arcana check, determine that these teleportation tablets will take them home to her home continent of Marquette in the city of Ank'Harel. So they're like, all right, well, we're pretty tapped for everything right now, both us and the rival party, so let's take a long rest here, and then first thing in the morning, we'll head to Ank'Harel. So there's 3 different watches that happen throughout the night. The first one is Dmitri and Dermot. They have some conversation because they're pretty friendly. The next is Io and Jimmy, which is also pretty friendly. They just talk about different things. And then the last is Maggie and Chozen, and they talk about a few different things before they all wake up. Everything is fine. They do hear some crumbling sort of behind the rocks, but the pileup is so big that they don't have to worry about any threats. And in the morning, they use the teleportation tablets, and away they go. They show up in this bright city, dry city of Ank'Harel, on top of the First Eclipse tavern. Across from them is the Lucky Run Casino. It's a complete change of pace from Bazzoxan, which has been cloudy and, is Bazzoxan. And here's bright and beautiful, giant, looming buildings everywhere. So it's kind of a fun change of pace. And my party is like, all right, well, now what do we do? The rivals are like, well, we're going to go find a home base, kind of. We're going to find a place to call home. We're going to see if we can't find out more about the ruidium, maybe track down Aloysia. We'll go do that. You guys do your thing. We'll meet up later if we can. So my party jumps down and they're like, all right, well, what do we want to do? I guess let's see if anybody around here has seen Aloysia. So they go into the tavern and they're met by the dragonborn patron who does not treat them well. Aloysia has given their descriptions to him. He knows who they are. They don't know who he is. But they spend some time. He's really, really slow about getting them drinks and food and all the different things that they've ordered. He's kind of rude to them. And they're like, well, I don't really like him. Let's just leave. Way out, Jimmy notices the symbol of the red crescent moon. They're like, oh, that's pretty strange. Okay. So then they head out and they come up with this crazy plan. Jimmy's like, all right, I can turn into a rat. So he turns into a rat and he goes around the corner into an alley and talks to a bunch of rats there and say, hey, do you know anything about this place? Is there anything weird going on there? And he's like, nah, there's just a bunch of food in here. And he's like, okay, well, do you know a way to get in there? And they're like, yeah, sure, it's up this way. He has to roll persuasion and all this stuff. But he rolls a persuasion check. The rats show him where to go in this little secret entrance. He gets into the kitchen, which where else would the rats want to go? So in the kitchen, there's a bunch of food and stuff. And Jimmy's like ripping open bags of rice and things to try and get them to follow him back into the other way and say, hey, isn't there anything else in here? Meanwhile, Iris turns invisible using the Jewel of 3 Prayers and heads back into the First Eclipse. And she starts studying around, looking around the symbol, can't figure it out. And eventually she just decides she wants to tap on it. And after the 3rd tap, the secret compartment unhinges and cracks open just a little bit. And the Dragonborn notices that this has happened. He's very confused. So real quick, she decides she rolls really well on her stealth. She's invisible. And opens up the door a little bit, manages to sneak into the secret room before the Dragonborn closes it. At the same time, Jimmy the Rat is trying to sneak in. He sneaks in, manages to get in, does not do well on his stealth check. The Dragonborn starts chasing him around with a broom. He ends up going into the secret room as well. The Dragonborn decides, well, you know what? I'll just close the door. The rat will take care of itself. So he just closes the door in hopes that the rat will eventually just die in there or whatever. We can take care of it later. All of that happens. Meanwhile, Chozen and Dmitri are across the way kind of watching things at the Lux Run Casino. Trixie is nearby sending messages throughout the entire thing to try and keep everybody informed of what's going on. So now we've got Jimmy the Rat on top of Invisible Iris's shoulder. They investigate the room, the secret hidden room, and there's nothing really for them to find. They do see some footprints. It looks like it's been there. They get the impression, basically, that this is some secret meeting room that the consortium uses. It was crazy. Lots of fun, lots of really close calls. And then they're like, crap, now how do we get out of here? Well, obviously the consortium needs a way to get out as well, right? So there's a way that they can open the door. It opens, they push out, and the Dragonborn notices something is different, right? Once, sure, crazy. Twice, not so much. He just shoots a burst of energy out and happens to hit, even with disadvantage, happens to hit Iris. She's able to keep her invisibility and just books it. She doesn't fight back because she wants to stay invisible. So he knows he's hit something and he starts looking around, misses, doesn't end up catching her or Jimmy. They both escape and run to the casino. This whole time, Chozen and Dmitri are like, well, should we just go knock the guy out? This is really pretty empty little tavern at the time. They decide, no, we'll wait and see. Iris comes back, reappears, and they decide they're just going to play in the casino for a little bit. They hang out in the casino for a while and just kind of case the area. Trixie finds an older lady who is playing some games, just trying to find someone who might have some information, and she asks about Aloysia, and she says, I might have seen her over there once or twice. I don't really know. I'm not really paying attention. I'm mostly here to win some money. I'm kind of thinking like the older lady, if you've ever been to a Vegas type area that's playing the slots. That's kind of the impression that we were giving there. It was a lot of fun. So after all of those shenanigans, they determined that, yes, this is definitely somewhere the consortium uses. Aloysia has been here. It's been at least a little while. She's not there currently. We need to find her. They go and talk to a few more people. They learn a lot about Ank'Harel, and this is where we gave a bunch of the secrets and clues. They learn about the 3 factions, a little bit about the history. They learn about the spring. They learn about the different districts. So they decide that they need some more information to continue on and find out more about Kael Morrow. They're really determined to find more about Kael Morrow and get there. So they head to the Sigil district. They do some research at some of the libraries. I think it was Trixie and Dmitri that were in... Trixie, Dmitri, and Jimmy were in the library. So Jimmy's looking for anything to do with Ruidium or Ruidus, and Trixie is looking for pretty much anything with ancient ruins. So they roll their checks, and they spend a few hours doing some research where they figure out that probably the spring underneath Ank'Harel has some ties to Kael Morrow. They're not 100% on that yet, but they're fairly certain. Jimmy also learns a bunch about being Ruidus born, and up until now they've kind of heard a little bit about it, but we really hit it home at this point that, Ruidus born, there's some bad ties to this, pretty unlucky, all these different things that the book talks about, we kind of laid into at this point. After they find out all this information, they want to go check out the ruins. They'd heard about the ruins of the excavation site. So they go to the excavation site. Obviously, they're not let in, but they see it. It's getting dark at this point, so they're like, all right, well, maybe we'll come back at a different time. They also learn that the Allegiance of Allsight is the only faction that's really able to get in here because they're the ones doing the excavating and research. While all of this happens, Chozen and Iris are finding a place for them to stay. So they find a little inn, a comfortable place for them to stay, and Chozen is pretty much just sleeping because that's what Chozen does, and Iris is just hanging out. After all of that happens, Jimmy wants to go check out the river district because it's the most beautiful place in Ank'Harel. They head there. It's farmland. They see the giant dome. At this point, the dome is closed for visiting because it's close to sunset. He decides, I'm just going to swim up one of the canals and go down. So he swims for a little while, and he swam down for about an hour or so and could not find the bottom of this. He wanted to see what the source of the spring was. And so he just kept swimming down and eventually decided it's time to turn around because I'm going to get lost or something bad's going to happen. So swims all the way down, can't find the end of it, and comes back up. So I didn't want my party to find Kael Morrow already. I'm pretty sure that's what that links to. I'm not 100%. That was also the other problem, is I wasn't exactly sure where that went. So that's what happened there. They all head back to the inn and go to sleep, and the next morning they are greeted by question, and we'll pick up from there in our next session. So all in all, pretty exciting stuff. It was a lot of fun. I really liked the hijinks at First Eclipse Tavern. That was a lot of fun and exciting. Not a combat encounter, but it was still pretty intense. Anyway, we'll see what happens in our next session. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. We'll catch you in the next one.